Hello and welcome to the West Yorkshire Football Show. I'm your host, Gareth Walker, and tonight I've got with me Jason McEwen from Width of the Post, and we're going to be doing a little quick preview show about the playoff game tomorrow against Bolton. Obviously, two legs start tomorrow. First one away at Bolton, second one at home for City on Thursday night. Whatever platform you're watching on tonight, may it be YouTube, Twitter, or X as it's now called. If you're listening on Spotify, please do give us a like or a subscribe. We've got a live show every Monday where we talk about everything that's going on in the football region of West Yorkshire, and we do specific shows to clubs as well, specifically Huddersfield and Leeds, but hopefully a bit more Bradford content coming soon. At the moment, we do match reviews that get uploaded to socials after every match. Jason, how are you?
Yeah, good. Yeah, excited. The weekend is here, and it's going to be an exciting weekend because the playoffs begin, and we are part of it. What could be better, eh?
I was going to say, it is nice to be part of it. I do sometimes say the playoffs are great for the neutral, but not great for the people that are involved in it. How are the nerves?
They're not too bad at the moment. I think it's a tough game, and obviously we're going to talk about that and go into the detail of that. I don't want to be like, well, it's just an achievement to be here and everything else is a bonus, because I think you've got to be ambitious now we're here. But equally, I think there is something that is, we're all season long, we've strived for this really, and to be in this position is something beyond what we could have expected last summer. So there is an element of, we've got to relish this occasion. I think they're going to be two brilliant legs, two brilliant crowds, and great fan bases, atmospheres will be cracking, the two teams are good. It's just going to be a really absorbing contest, and it won't be enjoyable if we lose, but I think it's still something to savour, isn't it, really? And this is what we worked all season for, so bring it on. What about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to think back to the playoff games from before. Obviously, I wasn't following City in '88, which obviously the first time we were in it, I was a bit young for that. But I remember obviously '96 and 2013, and then obviously the 16 and the 17 against Millwall and 23 against Carlisle. And they're very it's just the jeopardy that's involved with the games, isn't it? You notice it sometimes towards the end of the season. Like obviously we played Bolton in the last home game of this season, and it felt a little bit like a playoff game in itself because we were trying to get that playoff position, and so were they. And I think it was a similar situation with Carlisle in 2013. We played them towards the end of the season. It felt like I remember it feeling quite angsty. Just special games, aren't they? They're nervous, but they're exciting as well. I mean, what is that? Is that the type of game you're expecting, Jay? A bit of a nervy game, or what are you expecting from the game tomorrow? Are you expecting it to be end to end, or are you expecting it to be quite cagey?
I think it will be quite open. I've spent a lot of this week studying Bolton. I know a lot about their players now, more than ever wanted to know about them. I've even been watching Bolton podcasts to really get into the detail and understand the vibes of how their fans are feeling. And they are a very open, expansive side. They like to play, obviously, two wide players. We can get into the detail about that. They're very attack-minded with the forward Kenny and Sam Dolby, who should be back to play. He's a really key player for them. They create a lot of chances. They get a lot of shots on goal. They get a lot of crosses into the box. And they are quite open. They're actually quite vulnerable defensively. And that's something that, again, we can talk about in terms of the opportunities there. But I think they will certainly look to really attack us in that first leg. And I don't see us shutting up shop because we haven't really done that all season. I don't think we'll go gung-ho or anything like that. But I still think we'll look at there and go, we can hurt Bolton. Actually, they are quite vulnerable in certain places, and we'll go there to do that. So I am expecting quite an open game. Not so sure it'll be a high-scoring game, but certainly one where it'll be a bit end-to-end chances. I do expect Bolton to have some spells where they'll be quite on top, and we've got to kind of get through a couple of storms probably during that game. But I am, definitely hopeful that entertainment-wise and sort of drama-wise, we're going to be in for some big occasions. And you talk about the Carlisle game, that was just such a nervy one, wasn't it? It was almost both teams just so scared of losing really and what was at stake that it wasn't enjoyable, certainly for us. I think this is a little bit different where both teams will think the best form of the way they're going to do it is basically to attack rather than to defend. How do you see it?
Yeah, I think that goes back to that whole how much we've achieved this season, because we didn't expect to be in this position throughout the whole season. But then at the start of the season, but then as the season went on, it became more of a case of you don't want to throw this opportunity away. So the nerves and the jeopardy started to kick in. But I do think that when you come up in a playoff game tomorrow and obviously next Thursday, you've got to grasp it by the throat. You've got to take it for the opportunity that it is. And like you say, I think particularly City, our best form of defence is often to attack. We were best at the start of the season where we had that high press against teams that played with the ball. I mean, yeah, it is an achievement. How much of an achievement do you think it is, Jay, what we've done this season, and compared to where we were 2 years ago? Obviously, we had the situation against the 3 defeats in the March, and then obviously missing out on the playoffs. And we obviously got the automatic promotion last season. So what the club have achieved over the last 24 months, just how special has it been, and to have this reward of what we've got against Bolton, today and on tomorrow and on Thursday.
Yeah, I think it's really impressive, and all credit to the people at the football club. I remember me and you doing the podcast sort of during that March period, talking about how difficult things were, a lot of pressure on people like Stephen Rupp, Ryan Sparks. It just felt, I don't know about you, but I'd lost confidence in the club. I'd lost belief in the hierarchy that they could bring success, because the way we were structured, with a sustainable model, and just that sort of lack of kind of football expertise at the football club that was present at the time. You just thought we were kind of doomed to just tread water forever, really. And the turnaround since then, some difficult moments then, but the turnaround and what they've done, the extra investment from Stephen Rupp, the arrival of people like David Sharp, and just the solid plan that is where everyone looks like they're completely on the same page, has been really, really impressive, super impressive. And I think, obviously, last year's promotion was great, and we all loved that, and it was a great moment at the end of the Fleetwood game, etc. I think it's been even more impressive since then. The way that they approached the summer, the way that they had a real clear, methodical plan. The recruitment was really, really impressive. They went into the division with a real level of emboldened ambition that has borne out over the season. I'm not sure if they were expected to compete for the playoffs, but they certainly didn't come up thinking, a bit like in 2013-14, last time we got promoted, where you've got a great team that everyone loves, so we'll just stick with them. And they kind of, they aged quite badly that season, and change had to come. We look like we're on the front foot. Things like letting Richard Smallwood go, such massive calls, but completely vindicated and justified. But they weren't decisions that we were demanding as fans. We weren't expecting that. We almost came in thinking, if we stay up, that's a decent season, and it's all about sort of building from there. So the ambition that the club have shown has actually probably outstripped supporters, and they've kept that going. And I am really, really impressed with that. It's not perfect. We can talk about January, some definite problems there. But I think to get to where they are is a real statement of just how well run this football club now is. And even if we don't succeed now, I mean, I do think it will be tougher next season, and we can probably touch upon that if we're still in League One next season. But I still would be confident that this club is going in the right direction. And I almost feel, I don't want to say this is a free hit, but I almost feel like whatever we do over these 2 games, I still think this will go down as a really successful season where we can be proud of our football club. Is that how you see it?
Yeah, it's that whole word momentum. I remember people sort of scoffing at me a little bit. I've been on the pod a couple of years ago and saying that if we do get on a bit of a run, we can be hard to stop. We saw it under Phil Parkinson. Momentum's such a big thing in football, both when you're in games, but off the field as well, when everything's going for you and everything just builds up and builds up. And I feel like we're in that at the moment. And that's, in a way, why I feel like that's what possibly keeps me more positive about this playoff position, the playoffs that we're in. Because we have got momentum behind us, everything that's happened since obviously last season and the start of this season, and playing well and going through the season. And there were times this season when I thought that we wouldn't make the playoffs. But I think what an achievement it's been with what we've been up against this season. You look at the budgets that some teams have in League One to finish, well above Bolton for starters, or above teams like Huddersfield and Plymouth who haven't even made the playoffs given the money that they've spent. We've been really up against it this season, and I like the way that we've done it. We've been the underdog in a way, but I like to comment that Matt Taylor made last week after the Exeter game. Obviously, Matt Taylor used to play for us, didn't he? Had a brief spell at City. But he basically said that City were a great example of a League One team, that were a team of men and a team that worked really hard and fight for each other. And that's music to City fans' ears. And that's what's got us to where we are this season. The City supporter base see themselves in the team, and they see something that they can really get behind. And I really, really feel positive about momentum that's around the club at the moment. And like I say, I think like people scoffed at me a couple of years ago when I said we can be hard to stop, but hopefully that's the case over these next couple of games. There were points, like I say, this season where I thought we might not make it, and obviously me and you were in the away end at Barnsley, weren't we? When we conceded that late equaliser, and I spoke to the lads on the Monday show the other week, and I was pointing out that I think we finished 1 point less than we had last season in League Two. So I think we got 78 points last season in League Two, and we got 77 this season in League One. So we've finished equal. Obviously, we're behind Stockport on goal difference. But if there had been a third automatic promotion spot in League One, like there was in League Two last season, we would have missed out on it by goal difference, which is absolutely incredible, really, for a team that's just been promoted. And like I said, I don't think I could have coped if that Barnsley equaliser in the 96th minute, 10 men would have been what had cost us automatic promotion. I mean, were the points this season, Jace, where you thought, obviously we've been in the playoffs from the third week, I think it is, early on September. But were the points where you thought we might not quite make it, we might drop out? We had a couple of sticky runs, didn't we? And I remember looking at the fixtures towards the end of the season, looking at them and thinking, they're really tough. We've got a tough run in here. I think only Bolton possibly had a tougher run in than us.
Yeah, definitely. I think the January time really springs to mind when we obviously were in the automatic promotion contention at that point, and we could all see some difficult fixtures coming, and they didn't really go very well. Certainly the Huddersfield and Lincoln defeats in that week, it just felt it was all really falling apart, and you really feared for them, but they showed great resilience, I think, to come back at that point. The Doncaster win that followed the end of that month was huge. Beating Peterborough as well around that time. But there was still a feeling that the teams below were catching us. And I think we spent a lot of the season expecting Luton, Plymouth, Huddersfield to kind of get their act together and suddenly be quite strong, and we might struggle to stay in there. I mean, in the end, Luton and Plymouth did get their act together, but it came too late, and we were able to see them off. I also think as well, like you, after the Stevenage defeat, there was a point where we beat Wickham on Easter Monday, and it looked like we were done. We would just need one more win, and we had 5 games to go, 4 games to go at that point. It just seemed like, we're going to be fine because we'd just beaten Wickham, who were on a decent run at the time. And then suddenly the Stevenage defeat, and you just realise there's a little bit of jeopardy still there with the fixtures, as you say, that were quite tricky. The Barnsley game, the fact we had to play Plymouth and Bolton, and there was still that fear that we haven't got the job done, but it kind of felt like we kind of had to an extent, and it was just about falling over the line, which very much reminded me of last season when we were so close and then suddenly had a really bad month at the end of the season. But I think obviously they learned the experience from that. There was a real calmness in that, and I was so impressed by what we did against Plymouth, what we did against Bolton, the way we went to Exeter and just made it a non-event, basically. On the day of drama around the country in League One, we just made everything boring and won quite easily, and that is just so impressive. We've supported City for a long time, me and you, and we've seen good teams, bad teams, and I think I'm always confident when there's that resilience there at this football club where we can have a bad day and we're not going to fall apart because we've had a bad day. And we've seen it so many times where a defeat becomes a massive winless run for and the team club can't recover. With Graham Alexander at the helm, you just know that if we're having a bad day at the office, if something goes wrong, we're going to recover, and we've got that mental strength in there to keep coming back, and that just gives you so much confidence. And as you say, you can't really ask for more, really. I think as fans, that is the embodiment of what we see right now is the embodiment of what we want as supporters. I thought the Player of the Year award, Sarcevic winning, you look at it and go, did he deserve it? Definitely. There's about 10 other players you could have said they could have been contenders, and I think that says it all. It's been a year of loads of really strong contenders for prizes like that, and it's not very often that we say that.
And that's where you come back to that it's a team. It's been a team effort this season. You can look at various points during the season where you think, at the start, I thought that Bobby and Sarcevic were really important at the start. Then you had the period of time where Baldwin was absolutely fantastic. You've had Metcalf's gone off the boil a little bit lately. I remember the first couple of months of the year when he was absolutely fantastic, and you thought this is a guy who's going to go to the next level with us. So they've all played the roles, and as you say there, when you're talking about the Player of the Year, I mean, obviously we'll do our vote, won't we, for the width of a post later on, I'm sure, but I'd struggle to pick 5. I think you could easily pick more than 5 people that we do a top 5, don't we? And you could easily pick more than 5 that would deserve to have a say in that Player of the Year award. I think Sarcevic, obviously in himself, he's been a bit of a talisman, really. I think he could be. Obviously, we'll come on to tomorrow's game shortly, but I think that he could be key tomorrow because he didn't play in the 2 games against Bolton this season, both home and away. He's got a bit of a history with Bolton, and he just seems to be a big moments type player. And I think he could be key. He obviously came up with a big moment at Exeter. I was down at Exeter last weekend, and as you say, it was just a sort of a run of the mill, get the job done. Exeter threw everything at us. They made the subs quite early. They had to win to stay up, but we stayed calm and we got the job done. And that's been a sort of a staple point for us this season. I mean, looking at the tie that's coming up, obviously Saturday and Thursday, our home form has been better than our away form throughout the season. Although I have been reined in a couple of times by City fans that have told me that our away form isn't actually as bad as some people make it out to be. I think we're like mid-table in the away form table. But the fact that we're at home in the second leg, that's the first time in a Bradford City playoff campaign that we've been at home in the second leg. How important do you think that could be, Jace? Do you think it could be a bit of a game changer that we'll be at home second?
I think so, yeah. It's a massive thing. And you could see from Bolton, all the noises after they'd confirmed their player spot by drawing with us, all the noises going to that Luton game for them was that they've got to win that last game because they want to make sure that they have their home leg second. And they missed out on that, and there's feeling disappointment. Like I said, I've been spying in the Bolton camp, listening to what they're saying, and there's a fear from those guys that if they don't get a good first leg advantage at the Tough Sheet Stadium, that they worry about going to Valley Parade and the crowd and the way that we get on top of the players, the way that we can bully skillful players like Bolton undoubtedly have. There's a concern for that there, definitely. I think for us it's kind of that idea that whatever happens on Saturday, I mean obviously if we get thrashed that's not a good thing, but if we've lost 1-0 to drawn or whatever it might be, we know we've got the insurance of that home leg to come where we, as you say, we are so strong and have been all season that you'd really fancy us to do quite well in that game. And I think that's really key. Away from, as you say, it's kind of on record quite good, but it's also the fact that you go back to Leyton Orient just before Christmas. When we played Leyton Orient at that point, we'd only lost one away game all season. And then suddenly we had this middle dip where we just kept losing. So overall, our record's good because we had a good first half of the season and a good end, has to be said, winning against Wickham and Exeter and getting a draw at Barnsley, although that did not feel like a good result, as we touched upon. But there is that middle bit there. There's still that concern with us with our away form a little bit. And I think one thing looking at Bolton, they're a bit of a moments team. They seem to have spells where they're quite dominant, they play some good football, but just haven't necessarily been able to put it together for 90 minutes consistently through the season. It reminds me a little bit from reading about them and looking at the stats, a bit like the Mark Hughes team where they could be really good for spells, but we didn't see many 90-minute performances. So I think there's a danger on Saturday that, Bolton have a strong spell, score, then score again really quickly, and we could get blown away by 20 minutes where things don't go well. But assuming we can survive that, yeah, I'm pretty confident that coming to the home leg that we'd have a good chance. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I did want to talk about Bolton. I'll be honest, and we were both at both games this season, weren't we, against Bolton? Yeah. I wasn't at the Virtue Motors game when they thrashed us. I think that kind of showed the difference in squad depth that the two sides had at the time. I think Bolton obviously Bolton have got a lot more resources than us, and I would guess that, well, I know that they're an educated guess that their expectations at the start of the season were a lot different to ours. They'd expect to be challenging for automatic promotion. I think they've been in the playoffs previously, maybe one, if not two, of the previous last 2 years in League One. So their expectations were not higher. They were the team, having seen us play Stevenage and play Stockport and play themselves. Bolton were the team that I didn't want to play in the playoffs. They were the team that I probably feared the most. I think we obviously drew both league games against them, but I would argue that they probably edged both slightly. I do fear the two wide men. I thought that their two wide men, Sissoko and is it Cozier Dubry, I thought they were both absolutely fantastic in both games, and we're going to have to get a grip of them in both legs if we're going to be successful. It was interesting in the game a couple of weeks ago where we played Baldwin at right back, and the Sissoko gave him a torrid time. He really, really did. Yeah. So my thoughts on them are pretty much as you say, that if they get one goal, they could easily go on and get another goal, and we don't want to be blown away in that first leg. Where do you think we can win the game, Jason? Where will be our chances to sort of get one over on them? Maybe not tomorrow, but maybe over the course of the two legs. What will be? How will we line up, and where will we think that we can win the game?
So I think how we line up is going to be really interesting, because we've kind of obviously we've been a 3-4-3 team for most of the season, and then in the last few weeks we've changed around a little bit. Obviously the injuries to Bobby Point and Nancy Sarcevic have meant that we've had to look at doing different things. As you said, the Bolton game was really interesting because we matched up their 4-2-3-1 and played Nerfield really high up, with the idea being I think that they can get in behind their wide players who aren't going to track back, and also put some pressure on their defence, which is a little bit suspect to say the least. So I'd be surprised if we do that again in the away leg, especially because it's a risky approach, and we saw the risks in the Valley Parade game where Bolton had spells, as you say, where they were really on top, and having Baldwin isolated against Sissoko wasn't ideal, and it was difficult for him there. So I would expect us to go a bit more to the 3-4-3. The big question is probably Lapsley. In the Plymouth game, Lapsley played as number 10 behind Humphreys and Jackson, and what was really interesting about that was that he won a lot of balls quite deep. He played alongside Power and Metcalf when needed, and that was really important to stop Bradford City being overrun. And looking at Bolton, they play this 4-2-3-1 formation. They've got a couple of midfielders, Rodriguez and Sheehan, who are very good, and they've got Sam Dolby, who should be fit to play. He missed the game against us at Valley Parade, and there's a danger that those three could completely overrun Metcalf and Power. Who picks up Dolby is a question. Do you like midfielders do it, or are you expecting one of our centre backs to push out, which then potentially leaves us exposed for the wide players one-on-one? So there's a danger there as well. So what do we do about Dolby? And it might be that we look at Lapsley as potentially the answer to that question. Who we saw in those games, he can almost drop back and do a man marking job almost, and stop them, and also be quite effective going forwards. The only problem if we were to do that is it might leave Jackson and Sarcevic a little bit too isolated, because you're probably playing then a 3-4-1-2 formation, which probably doesn't suit Sarcevic. So I think that's kind of the dilemma, and I think it's going to be really interesting. We'll see the team obviously announced an hour and 15 minutes before kickoff, and probably won't have a clue really how they're going to line up until the game starts, because we could do one of three different things I think there. But I think Lapsley's suddenly emerging as quite a key player because of what he can do off the ball, and I think there's a danger that we've got to make sure that we don't let the bottom wide players overrun us, don't let the midfield overrun us, because they are a team that if they get in behind, find that space, they could really hurt us.
Yeah, I think like Lapsley, I'm glad you brought him up actually, Jace, because I thought he's been absolutely fantastic. He's a credit to himself, what he's done towards the end of this season. I do think, as you said there, I thought in the game a couple of weeks ago, Valley Parade against Bolton, I didn't think we talked about Bolton being a bit porous defensively, but I didn't think Jackson got much change out of those centre halves at all in that game. And when they scored, I feared that we struggled to. Obviously, the goal that they were both two great goals. Obviously, Kenny's finish for them is a fantastic finish, and Jackson's finish for us was really good as well. But I didn't think, other than that, he got much change out of their centre halves. So it could be quite interesting, as you say, to see how where Lapsley fits in. I mean, I've been worried, and I was going to talk to you as well about how the importance of obviously Bobby Point and Tyreek Wright. Obviously, we've missed them over the last few weeks, which has been a big blow because that's our entire left-hand side. How important do you think they could be if they were to come back in the second leg? I don't think they'll make tomorrow, but there's possibly a chance that they might make the second leg. But then the flip side of that is you're taking Lapsley out, who's been absolutely fantastic lately, and I don't think he deserves to be dropped. So how do you think that dynamic will work? Do you think we will miss them? Do you think if they are fit, they'll come back in, or do you think we'd stick with a Lapsley?
I think Tyreek Wright in particular is a big loss at this moment in time for us, because we saw at the Bolton away game that to deal with Koza Dubry was to put Torre as in defence on the left side and to put Tyreek Wright there and have that double protection, and it worked really, really well. Torre is an excellent defender, and you can obviously did a decent job against Koza Dubry in the recent Valley Parade game, but I think there's a potential there that if everyone was fit, they might look at that kind of an option, which may mean harshly that someone like Curtis Tilton might get dropped. So there's the selection headaches there, but it might be just that way, certainly in the away league, to counter that. I think if Poynton's fit, and certainly with the effort he's put into trying to be fit for that second leg, then you're probably going to bring him in, which may mean that Lapsley is unfortunately sacrificed at that point in time because of it's a different player to Aaron Connell, but he's a little bit similar in the sense that he's a really good player, Lapsley, but doesn't necessarily always fit the system. And right now, because of injuries, we've changed the system to a way that's really going to suit him. But if we've got everyone fit and we're going to say 3-4-3 as our formation, and it has been all season, Lapsley struggles to find a place there because he's not going to be picked ahead of Poynton and Sarcevic as the wide forwards because he's not as good at those positions. He's not going to be picked to play up front, so he has less of a role to play there. I guess it's a nice problem to have, isn't it? It might be harsh, but I think we know all season what we've done with Poynton and Sarcevic in those positions. And if the wing backs, certainly Tyre Wright was fit in that second leg, I think we'd be a lot more confident with that in terms of that attacking thrust there. So I think that's going to be key as part of that. And I think the other bit as well is, as you say, Jackson barely got a kick out of Chris Farino in that first game. Bolton didn't really concede many chances in that thing. So there is a danger as well if we're playing Jackson and Sarcevic central, that they may struggle a little bit to get into the game, and they could be well shackled. Bolton are interesting because they concede a lot of goals, and defensively they've really struggled. They've only had one clean sheet since the end of January. Jack Bonham, their goalkeeper, is not liked by Bolton fans. He's made quite a few mistakes, and I did a stat on my piece this week about it that in the last 8 games, Bolton have conceded 14 goals and they've only faced 28 shots on target in that run. So basically, 1 in 2 shots on target are going in the back of the net at the moment again for Bolton, and we saw that in the game with Jackson scoring out of nothing, really, didn't he? And that was a slight mistake as well. So the Bolton fans are very worried about their goalkeeper is not in good form. That they were all saying, Bradford City should just shoot on sight and certainly put pressure on him. So there's something there potentially where we may not create a lot, but where the way they've been playing defensively and the goalkeeper, that's going to, we don't necessarily need a lot of chances to score, and that'll be interesting.
Yeah, the other rumour, I don't know how true the rumour is, it's been bouncing around all week on socials, is that their striker Kenny, who they've got on loan from Celtic, there's rumours doing the rounds that he might be injured. Now, he's been absolutely brilliant for them, hasn't he? Because I know, looking at Bolton's sort of fans and the comments that they've made on social media, that I think earlier on in the season they were creating chances and struggling to take them, whereas obviously Kenny's come into the side and he's bagged quite a few. He's made a real difference for them. So we saw the quality that he has with his finish at Valley Parade. So that would be a huge boost for us if he wasn't available to play. Like I say, I don't know how true that rumour is. I think Stephen Schumacher didn't mention it at all yesterday. So whether it's a case of it's fabricated or he's just keeping his cards close to his chest, we won't find out until kick-off tomorrow. I think it's a really good point that you make about Tyreek Wright. I think it was absolutely gutting for him personally, and us as fans, that he got injured when he did, because he was probably in the best form that he'd been in for quite some time. He was playing really, really well. I'd commented on numerous occasions in the past how I thought he wasn't a left wing back and he was better further forward, and he kind of put those comments to bed in recent months, because he'd really made that left wing back position his own. He played really, really well. Like you say, he got the goal against Doncaster. He got the goal, the screamer that he got at Port Vale away, and I just thought he was in fine form, and he's been a real miss for us over the last few weeks. Although Ibu Touré's come in and done really, really well. I said at the start of the season, the way Ibu Touré was playing, he would be in the running for Player of the Year, and it's only been Tyreek Wright's fantastic form since the turn of the year that's kept Ibu out. I do think it might depend on how the result goes tomorrow as to what sort of side we select in the second leg. If Bobby and Tyreek are fit, they might be more likely to come in if we need to win that second leg by a couple of goals. But I think a lot of it and the team selection for that second leg and whether those two feature will come off the back of how we get on tomorrow. I do want to look at the other leg as well, the other game as well, Jace, the Stevenage against Stockport game, and how we think that will like. I did say earlier on in the show, and I've said it on previous pods, that I Bolton with a team I didn't want, not because I feel very confident against Stevenage or Stockport. The games against Stockport, we've done the double over them, but they were both very nip and tuck, those games. I thought they were both games that could have gone either way, particularly the first half away at Stockport, where I thought that they were absolutely fantastic. And we were very, very fortunate to only be 1-0 down at half-time in that game. And then obviously Stevenage are a totally different proposition. I've used the word shithoused us before. I think they really did against us in the home game a couple of weeks ago. But how do you see that one going, mate? Stevenage and Stockport.
I think that's a really interesting tie, that one as well. Stockport have had a really funny end to the season, and a little bit similar to Bolton. You're probably saying that more was expected of them. They've done well, finished third, but a lot of people were tipping them to win the league. And you've looked at Stockport all season and thought something's not quite right there. It's not quite the level you expect. And they've had a big fixture pile up. I was calculating before. I think they played between the end of the season. They played 9 games in 28 days, something like that. They were just Saturday, Tuesday, relentless. They lost to Port Vale, didn't they, in front of Pep Guardiola, and just go over the line. And there's always this feeling with Dave Challoner that he has to blast them quite a lot, and seems to be going through this continuous thing of doing okay, then slipping, and then there's a blast, and then they do a bit better again. They got the result at Barnsley. I wasn't surprised at that, but they do look a little bit like they're struggling and flagging. And Dave Challoner has a fantastic record in the playoffs, as everyone knows. Every season for how many years he's always guided the team to the playoffs. But he's actually got a pretty poor record in the playoffs themselves. They don't tend to do that well when they actually get there. So I'm not too convinced about them. I thought of all the teams I didn't want to play Stevenage because they did a proper number of us, didn't they? I thought, and I just think that is the sort of team that we have always struggled against. Playing that low block, time wasting, just not really engaging out, and us having all the ball and trying to break a team down. I thought that might be a tie we really struggle with. It might be different at Wembley, but I was really glad we didn't have to play him over the 2 legs, because that is traditionally the sort of opponent that we would trip up against. So I'm kind of tipping Stevenage probably to win that overall, because I just think they've got something about them this season, haven't they, where they're just able to win those games. And as I say, I think Stockport, something just doesn't quite smell right from the distance. So I probably just about see him tipping over that one. But yeah, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, Stockport, they're a team, obviously another one that's well backed. Dave Challoner, as you say, record of finishing a playoff position in each year that he's been in management, but not necessarily that great a success in the playoffs. I have listened to a little bit of what their fans have said towards the end of the season, and they've been worried that their legs have been running out a little bit. And as you say, that they have had a lot of games in a short space of time. They bounced back to win that, to obviously finish third, so they finished above us. But there is an element that they do seem to think that they've got tired legs in that Stockport side, and it'd be interesting to see how they do against the Stevenage, who, like you say, have a very distinctive way of playing. I don't think we should forget as well that Stevenage do have some quality in that side. I mean, you look at the saves that their goalkeeper made towards the end of that game against us. 2 fantastic saves, one from Sarcevic in particular. I don't know how he kept that out of the back of the net. And then obviously the lad up front, they've obviously got, I've forgotten what the lad's called, the attacking midfielder who scored against us. I can't remember his name. Anyway, it's him, and then and then the striker that they've got. Is it Reed? He scores quite a few goals for them as well. So they have got some quality in that Stevenage side. And I think some people kind of underestimate them a little bit. I think that'll be an interesting game. I wouldn't be surprised if that went Stevenage's way, as you say. But I do feel that if we can get through Bolton, I do feel we'd have a good chance at Wembley against either of those 2 sides. That's probably going to come back and bite me, but that is how I feel. I do think a lot will come down, to be honest, Jason, on how tomorrow goes. If we that was how I was going to finish, actually, by asking you what would be a good result for Bradford City tomorrow, because I'm of the opinion that we just need to, if we can get through tomorrow and not be blown away and not get turned over at Bolton, I think we have a good chance. If we were to go and, like you said, Bolton are a team that do have it in them to really turn it on and score a couple of goals in quick succession. And if that was to happen, I'd fear for us coming back to Valley Parade. If we were to come back with a 2-goal deficit or more, I'd be worried. What do you see as a good result for City tomorrow? What should we be looking to get out of tomorrow's game, mate?
I think we've got to be targeting to draw the game at least, and certainly have no fear of going there. I don't see us, like we've already said, I don't see us going there and playing for 0-0. Obviously, a little bit of caution, because that's natural. But I think we will go there and we will create chances, and I think there's a good chance we can score there as well. I think the worry is if we are to lose, and obviously Bolton would expect to win being at home. If we lose by more than a goal, then I'd be a little bit worried, because we did get 2 at Exeter, but we have struggled to score consistently. I think sort of many goals compared to the start of the season. We were really scoring so many goals up until the end of September, and since then it's been more ones and twos and stuff like that. And if we're in a situation where we've got to get quite a few, and then I think we may have some difficulties just because of Bolton, of what they've got there as well, because they certainly won't come to Valley Parade and shut up shop either. And they've got that ability to hurt us on the counter attack. I suspect if we're losing the first leg, then we may go back to that formation. We tried the 4-2-3-1 in the second leg where we pushed Nerfil up, but that comes with the risks that we saw that the wide players will have a lot of space, and we're relying on making sure that we're not overrun with Dolby and stuff like that. So there's a concern there that as we try and go for it, they will more than be happy to pick us off and get an opportunity there. So you've got to fancy Bolton as much as I fancy us to score at Bolton. I think Bolton would also fancy them chances of scoring at Valley Parade as well.
Absolutely.
So having like a 2-goal deficit, that's going to be a real tall order, I think, and to come back from there.
Yeah, I agree. As I say, I think if we can come out of tomorrow level or within a goal, we've got a chance. I think anything more than that, and it's going to be really, really tough back at Valley Parade, because, as you say, I think you hit the nail on the head where you're saying our problem, particularly since the turn of the year, has been scoring goals, and they are a big threat on the counter with those two wide players that they've got. So I would take a draw or a 1-0 or a 1-goal deficit tomorrow, but anything more than that, and I would be worried. It's the first time, like I said, that we've been at home in the second leg. I'm just hoping that it's more 96 and 2013 than our other previous playoff campaigns. We're due something in the playoffs, so fingers crossed, Jace, that we get it tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to wrap it up there, mate. It's going to be nerve-wracking tomorrow, whether you're at Valley Parade watching it on the big screen, whether you're at the Tough Sheet Stadium watching it in the ground. Me and you are both watching it on the box, aren't we? We couldn't get a ticket, but fingers crossed for us tomorrow, and we'll see how we get on Thursday as well. Onwards and upwards with the West Yorkshire Football Show. Thank you very much for joining us, Jason.